I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and once again, Donald Trump receives a horrible blow to his chances of ever hoping to beat President Biden or becoming the president once again. In an interview on The Daily Show with the legendary Jon Stewart, former House of Representatives member and Republican Ken Buck had a number of different things to say about Donald Trump and the whole trial and the various precedents that it's kind of set. Now, this was a pretty long interview, and we're not going to go through all of it, but I want to point out various sections where Buck and Stewart got into it and really kind of hashed out the details about what's going to happen now, what's going to happen moving forward, and also kind of them talking to the various points of inequity and, let's call it, injustice in our legal system. This is probably something that we're all somewhat familiar with or have a gut feeling about, but in our justice system, there is absolutely a two-tiered system. You have the average Joes, kind of like you and I, who probably don't have the most money to spare for any sort of legal expenses or a lawyer or anything like that, and are subject to a wide variety of potential reprimands or punishments. Then, of course, you have the upper class, the top 1%, those individuals that have millions, if not billions, at hand to spend on lawyers and legal expenses and can receive a higher quality of defense than the rest of us can afford. Now, this isn't a new problem and has been around for quite some time, but this is also something that lies beneath the surface of Donald Trump's hush money trial. Despite Trump's efforts and business failures, he does have a good amount of money on hand to spend for his legal defenses, as well as pretty much anything he wants. If memory serves, this absolutely blows my mind, but shortly after he received his 34 guilty verdicts, he ended up raising something to the tune of around $30 million within the first 24 hours, which is wild to me. It is such a shame to me that so many people are willing to part with their hard-earned money and give it to a man that is a liar and a grifter and a con man. He's not interested in their well-being. Now, this is a pretty hefty interview, but we're going to take it in bite-sized chunks, and for this first clip I want to show you, I really want you to pay attention to what Buck has to say about Republicans and the contradictory messages they can often send about, decrying Donald Trump when they're running and then turning around and supporting him. I'm talking to you, Nikki Haley. But take a look for yourself and see what this top Republican has to say about the hypocrisy that the Republicans often display in the media.
I see so many Republican stalwarts who are on the record as saying, this man is a con man. This man is not worthy of the highest office of the presidency. This man defiles our great country. I'm supporting him in 2024.
In order to get elected, you got to get 51% of the vote. And so there's this combination of wanting to do the right thing, so you run for office, and then you need to be popular in order to win. And the Republican Party now, a majority of Republican primary voters are MAGA supporters. And so you don't want to make the man mad who is really in control or strongly influencing the MAGA voters. So those folks are making a calculation. They want to stay in office. I think that there's 100% of the folks who are running for office who recognize that if they're going to win a Republican primary, they need to be Trump supporters.
Right. And that's what's happening. Was there discussion behind the scenes in Congress where people would say, I want this to end? Do they feel hostage to that?
I'm in both parties, honestly. In both parties, there is a real problem with the folks who are at the head of the ticket.
And that's just it. That's the hypocrisy that is embedded into the fabric of the Republican Party. If these politicians that run as Republicans want to get into power, they have to have the MAGA vote. They have to have it in order to sustain themselves in the political world. And Buck said himself, behind these closed doors, Republicans are sick and tired of Trump. And I think we were all pretty well aware of that. Maybe someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene is the exception to this. I think she probably is obsessed with this sort of stuff. But I think for the vast majority of Republicans, they are sick and tired of dealing with this kind of crap and are ready to move forward. So now the Republicans find themselves between a rock and a hard place. They don't want to support Donald Trump, and they're tired of dealing with him. And yet, in order to get elected, they have to have his support and his supporters' support. So, what do they do other than continue these bullshit narratives and perpetuate the lies? And that right there speaks to the very heart of the Republican Party. It is cowardice. These cowardly Republicans are absolutely standing behind this wall of virtue signaling. Saying that they believe in what Donald Trump is saying that they believe the election in 2020 was stolen, saying that our country is under attack, and all of these other falsehoods. And they know that. They know that they're lying. But as many people have speculated, Donald Trump is not the source of our country's ailments and woes. Rather, he is a symptom or a byproduct of a deep rot that has been festering in our country and is actually what this second clip is going to talk about. I want you to listen to what Stewart and Buck had to say about our justice system and what that would look like underneath a second Trump presidency. God forbid. But I also want you to listen for the inequity that they discuss about our current system and how there's absolutely a multi-tiered system, and it is very much a sort of pay-to-win mechanic.
We basically have a bargain with white-collar crime where we say, how about if you give us like 5% of it and everything will be fine? Like, isn't that not speak to political targeting, but the way that we diminish white-collar crimes? I mean, 2008, the financial system collapsed and one dude went to jail for like 3 months. I mean, I think Martha Stewart did a longer stint.
Absolutely. A black kid walks into a bank, robs a bank, 20 years. A white guy at a bank steals millions of dollars compared to $1,200, gets off with probation or goes to a camp in Florida for a few months. Absolutely inequitable. Absolutely. And Congress and
So
state...
couldn't you look at this as actually not a shameful precedent, but an unbelievably positive step in sending a message that the low level of corruption that seems to be the center of our political life is unacceptable? Here's where this takes us, I think. I don't believe Donald Trump is the sole threat to our democracy. I truly don't. I think he is a symptom of a dissatisfaction that people have with the democratic system, where if you have money and you're powerful, you can go, oh, it's on my ledger as a legal expense. His prescription of our system is correct. The system is rigged. And people's dissatisfaction with that is what leads to Donald Trump being able to command that dissatisfaction. Where I would disagree with him is I don't think he wants to drain the swamp. I think he wants the deed to the swamp signed over to him so that he can turn America into just another subsidiary of the Trump organization. Just because you don't like the result. He doesn't like the result of the election. Our elections are a fraud and we're a third world country. He doesn't like the result of a criminal case. Our courts are a fraud. Well, what would make him better? If they did what I wanted. No, that's not our system. No, that's a monarch.
I think what would make them better in his mind if they didn't convict him.
That's my point.
Yeah, but I don't think he wants justice in this country. I don't think he's standing up and saying we need justice. He's standing up and saying the election's stolen, so let's see if we can overturn the election in Congress. I didn't win in the courts, so let's go to Congress.
Jon Stewart, once again, proving to be spot on. Donald Trump does not view this country as anything other than a means to boost his own ego, power, and income. He's proven to be one of the most greedy individuals that's possibly ever entered into American politics and has only ever worked to serve himself. And they were absolutely right. Donald Trump has meddled and interfered with our justice system because it produced a result that he didn't like. And then he decided to meddle and interfere with our election system, saying that it was rigged because it produced a result that he didn't like. He's not interested in upholding the values our country was founded on. And it's so frustrating to see so many of his supporters who try at least to champion these values and yet turn around and are taken in and swindled by a man who represents the antithesis of such. Now, our judicial system is only one piece of this large interconnected puzzle that surrounds Donald Trump in this trial. One of the biggest problems that surrounds Donald Trump in this whole damn issue is the media, and that's exactly what Stewart and Buck talk about in this next clip. Now, I want you to take a look and see what Stewart and Buck had to say about Donald Trump and the press that has been perpetually surrounding him.
The courts have been a really important stopgap. I think our courts there is a two-tiered system, and poor people without access get screwed. But I do think it's played an important role in holding up certain things in terms of corruption. I think the news media has forgotten that that can be part of their role. Is that something that you think could bring a sense more of an established reality, an earned authority from the media that could create some parameters that we can all sort of agree on? Is that something that you think would be possible?
I think we went from Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather to entertainment. And I think the problem...
Why are you looking at me? I had nothing to do with this.
I think the problem right now is everybody gets their news sources in silos, and they just keep getting reinforced with certain ideas.
But I think also the algorithms of social media incentivize you to more and more radical content. They want to keep you engaged in the same way that the news media needs kind of fear and urgency. I always say it's built for 9/11, but in the absence of 9/11, they have to make you think like it's 9/11. Yeah. And I think the algorithm, plays a role in that as well, driving us into those holes, lacking perspective.
It's kind of funny how these two men, despite being on opposite sides of the aisle, are agreeing on so much when they can have this open and honest conversation. And I think they're absolutely right. These major media outlets like, again, CNN, Fox, MSN, or these social media sites like Facebook or Twitter, these can so often affect you in such subtle ways, like siloing you to one specific set of information or news that sometimes you don't even notice when you're getting fed just one side of the story. It just seems like you're getting the news. And it's a message that I personally, along with pretty much all of us here at Occupy Democrats, resonate with, because we wanted to set out to try to clear the air surrounding Donald Trump's lies. This man has peddled so many falsehoods and fabrications and bent the truth so many times that we could spend a century trying to work and weed through all of his crap and try to undo the damage that he's done. We certainly have our work cut out for us. But again, that's why getting your information and your news from so many different sources like Occupy Democrats, and not just getting it from MSN or CNN or Fox, because you're going to get a variety of different opinions. You're going to get a variety of different ways that a story is being covered. But we try to cover these stories and provide these videos to you so that you can get more exposure and more opinions and more diversity in your news. And unlike CNN or Fox or any of the other major media outlets, Occupy Democrats and the other various media outlets that cover news here on YouTube, Instagram, and all the various other social media platforms aren't beholden to advertisers or to these board members or CEOs or all these other various people in positions of power that kind of control and dictate the narrative in the organization. Now, in this final clip, I want to show you Buck and Stewart kind of wrap up and kind of summarize and discuss their final thoughts on Donald Trump, this trial, our political system, and just the whole ordeal that we've all been subjected to these past few years. Take a look.
What will break this fever in Washington?
America does great with a crisis. 9/12, America came together and we were a unified country. I hope we don't get to that crisis point. But I think that there is a leader out there that will unify and help unify America. And it's somebody who has great morals, somebody who has great leadership skills, a John F. Kennedy. But you look at what John F. Kennedy did in terms of bringing the country together during the Cold War and moving us forward. There is somebody there that will help America heal and move forward.
And there you have it. We desperately need a candidate that is going to stand up for the ideas and the values that this country has represented for over 200 years now. And I do believe, like Buck and like Stewart, that that person is out there. We are undeniably in a bit of a trough in our country right now, but this isn't the first time our country has been in a bit of a low. World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, September 11th, like they said, all of these points in time kind of represent this low point in the United States. And yet, despite being at these lows, despite many people thinking that these various events in the past were going to be the end, this was the end of the world, or this was the end of the United States, it wasn't. We came together as a country, and despite maybe all odds, rose to the occasion and came together. Now, I certainly don't want to conflate a message of hope for a better tomorrow with a message of passivity and complacency, as there's a lot of work that we're all going to have to do to overcome the damage that Donald Trump has inflicted and help those that were taken in by Donald Trump and his con and bring them back into the light. And I certainly hope it doesn't take a terrorist attack like September 11th or a major world war to once again reunite this country. I believe that we can accomplish that with the right leader. So despite me having to cover some pretty gnarly subjects in the past and will likely continue to cover in the future, I still believe in us. I still believe in this country, and I still believe that we have what it takes to come together and be the best damn country on the planet, America. But in all seriousness, this does start at the local level and work its way up. And that is why I constantly like to hammer home the importance of voting. I know you've probably heard me say this before, but it is so incredibly important. If you have not registered to vote yet, please do so. Please do so as soon as possible. And when election day comes this November, go to the polls, go listen to your audiobook, go listen to some music while you wait, and cast your vote. It is so incredibly important. And like Buck and Stewart mentioned, these major media outlets can be troublesome, so why not go ahead and subscribe to Occupy Democrats, as we'll cover all the news you need to know right here.